The Camera, an extract from the anthology Shades of the Unknown by John Wing. They were on the outskirts of Bristol in the countryside, 12 of them, mainly in shorts and t-shirts, as it was another fine day, ideal for photographic opportunities. The brief was to take some imaginative shots within the surrounding area, and it was suggested they should go in 2s or 3s. Graham Priestley partnered himself with Sean Upton, a fellow postman who had his Canon hanging around his neck, eager to get started. They made their way along the country lane, away from the pub, which they would return to for lunchtime. Gradually, the group dispersed, going their separate ways. Graham and Sean clambered over a nearby stile and headed across a field. "So then," Sean asked, "how much did that bit of kiss cost you?" £450. "Not bad, a real good bargain by the looks of it." "It was," Graham conceded. "The guy at the shop wanted more, but I haggled him down." "Well done, you. I've been meaning to get a new camera. I think you've tempted me." Sean then added, "What make is it, by the way?" "I don't know, it doesn't say." "That's odd." "That's not the only thing." Graham began to relate what happened yesterday regarding the blemishes on all the images. When he had finished, he offered Sean his camera to see what he made of it. "Very strange," Sean muttered as he reviewed several images. "Still," he said more positively, "Photoshop will sort that out." Of course. The thought had never occurred to Graham to use software. Admittedly, it was an inconvenience, but it was definitely a solution. It had lightened his mood considerably. As they ambled across the field, they came upon some cows, most of whom were lying on the grass, though few were standing and grazing nonchalantly, ignoring the walkers. In the distance there were several hot air balloons, 2 of which were considerably closer than the others. "Of course, it's the balloon fiesta," Sean commented. "They take off from Ashton Court." The 2 closest balloons were getting nearer. One had red, yellow and green stripes, while the other was dark blue with large white letters advertising a well-known building society. Graham commented, "That would make a great photo." "I think you're right," Sean concurred. They positioned themselves. Graham went on his haunches and framed the scene with 5 cows in the foreground, and waited patiently for the striped balloon to get a little closer. He could see clearly there were 4 people in the wicker basket, including the pilot. They were only a few hundred feet off the ground. The burner suddenly released a spout of flame up inside the envelope. Some of the cattle mooed their displeasure. As the flame spurted up, Graham took several shots. The balloon steadily climbed higher and higher. He noticed one of the occupants waving. He returned the gesture and took his last shot. He strolled over to his friend. "How do you do?" "Good, I think." They both continued walking, entering some nearby woods. For the rest of the morning they took several more photos, and by 12:30 they were back at the pub, meeting the rest of the budding photographers. Over lunch they talked and showed their results, including Graham and Sean. But to Graham's dismay, the blotch on all his photos seemed even worse, especially when he zoomed into the images. The blemishes were no longer faint, but more like a shadow. No, that wasn't quite right. As he inspected the latter shots he had taken, it was more like a black figure, without any distinguishing features. There were a couple that really disturbed him. One was a small wooden bridge with a running stream below it. Sunlight was filtering through the trees, giving the whole scene a rather ethereal feel to it. But on that bridge was the black, ominous figure. As he skimmed through the ones he'd taken of the balloon, about 18 in all, he noticed that the outline became more and more prominent, until the final shot of the colourful striped object, the person who he thought was waving at him, wasn't any of the people on board, but the black, human-like shape that appeared to have an arm raised, as if it were waving. "This is weird," Graham muttered. "I just don't understand it." He handed the camera to Sean, who inspected the pictures. He too was perplexed, but still maintained that Photoshop would be able to remove the inexplicable imperfections. Graham hoped so. After eating and downing some pints, the group continued with their hobby and spent another 2 hours of further photography, though for Graham, his heart wasn't in it anymore. Admittedly, he did take a handful of shots, only because he felt he had to, and not wanted to spoil the day for his friend. By 4, the club dispersed, agreeing to show their best shots at their weekly meeting on Wednesday. Sean dropped Graham off at his house at just gone 5 and would see him again at work on Monday. Once inside, Graham immediately got his laptop, connected his camera via USB cable and transferred the photos. He then opened the software editing application and set about removing all the unsightly marks. It took him some considerable time, but by 7:30, much to his relief, he had done it. He was starving by now. He couldn't be bothered to cook himself anything, so he went to his local chippy, buying cod and chips with mushy peas. He felt he'd earned it. He plonked himself in front of the TV while eating, watching the second episode of the dramatic Chernobyl on Sky Atlantic. It was past 9 when the programme had finished. He got up, taking his plate and glass to the kitchen, placing them in the dishwasher. He stepped back in the living room, realising he had forgotten about the laptop. It was still on. He went over to it. The last image he had doctored was still on view. He craned his neck forward. "That can't be," he muttered to himself. He sat down and studied the picture even closer. He skimmed back and looked at some of the others. "How can that be?" he asked himself. "It's not possible." In every photo that he had painstakingly worked on, the blemish was still there. If anything, it was even more pronounced, because in all of them it was indubitably a dark shadow, a human form that stood in every shot, very clearly, very distinguishable, a focal point that marred each and every shot. The eyes couldn't help but lock on to the unwelcome oddity. Graham's mind tried to come up with a reasonable explanation, but he couldn't. What he saw shouldn't be conceivable, but there it was. The unwelcome black figure was as real as every other aspect of each image, whether it was a building, trees, cattle, the sky or grass. It was part of the landscape in all the photographs. There was only one thing he could do. He deleted every single picture. When he had done that, he did the same with the camera, expunging over 70 stills, gone for good. It was a relief. He felt like he had removed an irritating and burning splinter. As he had to get up early in the morning for work, he went to bed and tried to forget the whole bizarre incident. But he spent a restless night tossing and turning as the black figure invaded his dreams, taunting him like a tenacious spectre. Graham suddenly awoke at 4 in the morning with a loud shriek of "No!" He could go back to bed. He moped about a bit, then showered and changed, and then he managed a small breakfast of a round of toast and coffee. He left for work at just past 5:30. The day was normal. He did his job and got home shortly after 2:30. Tuesday was the same. He delivered his post, avoiding yapping dogs, talking to the odd person about mundane things such as the weather and the state of the world, and another day was finished. Not once had he touched or considered his camera. On the Wednesday, after they had completed their rounds, Sean commented that he would see Graham at the photographic club, but Graham wasn't so sure. "You got to, mate. You can't let a thing like that stop you. You really enjoy it." "But it's just put me off." "I tell you what," Sean said, "bring your camera tonight and we'll swap. Borrow mine for a few days and I'll have yours." "Are you sure?" "Of course I am. If you insist." Without hesitating, Sean emphasised, "I do." Graham was in a much better spirit than he had been for days thanks to his friend's suggestion. "Right, I'll see you tonight." Graham went home with a spring in his step, actually looking forward to the meeting later on. 20 people of various ages had turned up at the photographic club. Those that had spent the day out together taking photos shared 3 of their best with brief comments. Sean shared his, whereas Graham made the excuse he had been in such a hurry that he'd forgotten to bring his. A topic was then discussed, which had been chosen at the previous gathering to improve their photographic skills. This time it was about depth of field. A visiting speaker talked for nigh on 45 minutes, after which another topic was voted for. It was decided the subject would be on action photography at the next monthly meeting. Tea and coffee were then served as people mingled. This was when Sean and Graham exchanged cameras, with Sean promising he would return it on Sunday. Graham got home at 10:15 and went straight to bed, having a good night's sleep, something which he hadn't been having too often lately, due to the mysterious black figure haunting his dreams. He went to work as normal on Thursday and Friday, and did his rounds on Saturday morning, which he did fortnightly. In the afternoon, however, he indulged in photography. Much to his considerable relief, there were no tarnishes or perplexing shadows in the images. Each and every one he was very pleased with. On a crisp Sunday morning, with church bells pealing in the background, he walked down by the river near where he lived and took more photos of the swans or ducks on the water, of the occasional barge or rowing boat, and practised his depth of field with a few of his shots as well. All in all, he was very satisfied with what he had taken. Just after 5, there was a knock on his door. It was Sean. "How'd it go?" Graham inquired. "No problems. I've left the photos on the camera so you can see for yourself." "I'm glad to hear it." They swapped cameras. "Do you want to come in?" Graham asked. "I can't. Sally and I are going out." Graham noticed Sean's girlfriend sat in the passenger seat of his Vauxhall Astra. She gave him a quick wave. He did the same. "Another time then." "Of course." Sean returned to his vehicle and drove off. Graham shut the door behind him and went to the living room. He sat down, deciding to view the shots his friend had taken. Graham was speechless. He couldn't understand it. It seemed that Sean had lied. It was plain as day. In every single photograph, the peculiar shadow was there. Graham thought to himself, why? Why would he lie? He grabbed his phone from the kitchen table, sat back down on the settee and called his friend. Sean answered. "What is it?" "Why did you lie?" Sean, taken aback, blurted, "What do you mean?" "It's there, on every damn one." "But that's impossible." Graham could hear his girlfriend say something, to which Sean replied, "It's nothing." They were still obviously in the car. Sean drew his attention back to Graham. "Look, mate, I'm not lying. I checked them just before I came to you. There was nothing wrong with the photos." There was silence. "Graham, are you still there?" Still no answer. "Look, I'll drop by later. I'll want to have a look for myself." Graham, barely audible, uttered a faint, "Sure." He hung up. Sean had taken about 20 images, all decent shots, if it wasn't for the insufferable blemish. But that wasn't all, because the next still completely flummoxed him, and not only that, but the further remaining photographs. "What the fuck?" he muttered questioningly. There before his very eyes, all the ones he had deleted, from the ones he had taken on the day with the photographic club, and the day he had spent in the city centre, and then at the Clifton Suspension Bridge, they were on his camera. Even though he had deleted every single one of them, there they were. It defied explanation. If you're intrigued how this story continues, it is available to download or purchase as a paperback from Amazon in my anthology, Shades of the Unknown.